right, 3, 2, 1. Don't touch your face. You can't. It's impossible. Welcome back, everybody, to day 2 with Words for the Community. Hope you're all doing well and staying healthy and safe and getting everything you need at Costco and all the other stores that are still open. If there's anything that you need, again, you can reach out via email or phone call. The church office is officially closed for the next 2 weeks, but feel free to reach out to any of the pastors. Our info is all on our website. So go on there and if you need anything, we'd love to know about that. And also any prayer requests. We talked about that last week, but anything that we can be praying with you through, we'd love to know what that is. So you can comment on Facebook where these videos are going. Again, remember that Facebook is very public. You can also email us individually. And we'll be praying for you. So a couple things as we go, just as a way of reminder. Tomorrow is the first edition of Hanging with the Pastors. We're talking about how to survive the apocalypse. And we'll see if it goes okay. So we're starting with that tomorrow, and hopefully every Wednesday at 3 o'clock we will drop a new episode. We'll actually be live for the filming of that. So we'd love it if you came and you responded and interacted and asked some questions. Otherwise, we'll just have to ask the questions that we've already written down for ourselves, which is boring. So come on at 3 o'clock tomorrow. We'd love to talk to you there. And then also, we're still going to stream our Sunday message at 9:30. For all of you who were on, at least for the beginning portion of last Sunday, we would like to say we're sorry. I don't know what it was. I did something with a friend a while ago, and we didn't do very good at whatever this thing was. And we got in the car, and he looked at me and he's like, whoa, that learning curve was steep. That's how we feel about streaming live. So we've gotten some things figured out. We've done a lot of test runs, and so we'd love it, again, if you would tune in with us this Sunday for a live service at 9:30. And if things start to go awry, we're going to pull the plug early, and it's pre-recorded, so we'll just play that. But we'd love it if you're there to set that time aside every Sunday at 9:30. We're thankful to have that opportunity. So with that, we're trying to keep these short, so let's just get booking through. We're in Luke chapter 12, so hopefully you've been reading. That's the invitation to read along with us as we go through Luke's gospel. It's a beautiful gospel. And so we're in the middle, towards the end of Luke chapter 12, starting in verse 35. I'm going to read the first, or not the first, but just 5 verses going through verse 40. This comes out of the NIV. And Luke writes, and this is Jesus speaking. He says, "Be dressed, ready for service, and keep the lamps burning, like servants waiting for their master to return from a wedding banquet, so that when he comes and knocks, they can immediately open the door for him. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them watching when he comes. Truly I tell you, he will dress himself to serve. He will have them recline at the table and will come and wait on them. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them ready, even if he comes in the middle of the night or toward daybreak. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. You also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him." Okay, that's just a super short passage, but right away you pick up this really strong theme in the passage of being on your watch, to be actively waiting, to be watching, all for this event of when the master's going to return. But it's really beautiful what Jesus is going to do here, because Jesus is really concerned about the whole of you, not just parts of you. And so Jesus gets at the whole of people in this passage, as opposed to just trying to clean up a little section of our lives, trying to get us to obey him out of due diligence or duty or honor or out of fear. And so in doing that, Jesus paints a couple of pictures. And so the first picture that he paints is that of a servant waiting for their master to return from a wedding banquet. And normally I try and shy away from using TV or movie references, but my assumption is that you've all been binge watching like crazy for the last couple of weeks. And so I'm not saying that I have watched Downton Abbey, but I have. And so when I was reading this passage, if you haven't seen it, don't worry about it. But I was reading this passage and I had that visual in my mind of all of these people waiting expectantly for the owners of the house to return. And so you have that image in your mind as Jesus begins to paint this first picture of these servants eagerly waiting for their master to return. And so they're not just supposed to wait around, probably like you and I are, with COVID-19 in our PJs on the couch. They're supposed to be actively waiting. It says, get dressed for service and keep your lamps burning. And so there's this readiness and this intentionality that Jesus speaks to in the waiting. And for any King James Version lovers out there, it's the famous line, to gird your loins. And I have not found that helpful at all. But the image is that these servants are to tuck in their outer garment into their belt to be ready to run to service. This is the picture that Jesus is drawing, that you're attentive, that you're waiting, that you're faithfully watching. And so the question comes, why would you do that and put that effort in? And so Jesus says the reason for all of this faithful watching is so that when he, the master, comes and knocks, that they, the servants, can immediately open the door for him. And so the servants, they're not just waiting for appearance's sake, right? They're not doing it just to show honor or because they're made to do it. They have come prepared. They have their lamps ready to go with enough oil in them. They've come and they've tucked their outer garments into their belt, and they're looking and they're faithfully watching for the return of their master. And so again, if you read these just isolated, they can be kind of confusing. But remember, Jesus is speaking in this whole series of Luke chapter 12. There's all of these teachings of Jesus, but then we're following Jesus as he's on this road to Jerusalem. And so we've heard him talk about things to be on the guard against, things like the unbelief of the Pharisees that works out into the greater society. This unbelief, Jesus refers to it as the yeast that works its way through the whole batch of dough. He says, be on your guard for false teaching like that. And then Jesus goes on and says, you and I need to be very much aware of eternal things and how much eternity matters to God, and to not put too much stock into ourselves. Last week, we talked about that guy who had a ton of resources, and yet when he looked at everything, instead of trusting in what he had, he simply said, what I'm going to do is tear them down and build bigger barns. And says Jesus goes, don't put too much stock into yourself, but be like the birds who trust in a creator God who cares for them. And so in this balance of Jesus being able to show how God is going to come and to deal with every individual person, that God still cares for you much more than many sparrows, that he looks after you like he looks after the ravens. And so within all of this, in that context, in the greater context of Luke, Jesus says to be faithfully watching for what? For the master to return. And so verses 37 through 38 really start to get good. Jesus says that if you're waiting for the master, that if he comes and he finds you waiting for him, expecting him, ready to open that door, that what you'll realize is that when the master comes in, what he'll do, it's crazy, right? What he'll do is he'll actually wait on you. That the master of the home will come in and reverse roles. Pastor Eric's going through the Gospel of Mark, and one of the key verses and themes in that entire gospel is Mark 10:45. For the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. And so Luke is referencing that same idea, that if you're faithfully watching for the master to come, if you're prepared and ready for him, that what you'll find is that when he does come, that he'll be there to serve you, that he'll come and he'll make you sit at the table as he waits on you. It's crazy. It's this beautiful image that Jesus is trying to show them. And so he goes on and says that it will be good for those servants whose master finds them ready, even if he comes in the middle of the night or toward daybreak. And so Jesus is going, it's for the long haul. Imagine the disciples, where he's taking them, what he knows is in front of them, right? You think to the Garden of Gethsemane when he goes, come and pray with me. And there's so much grace in Jesus, and yet so much foresight and wisdom as he knows what's coming and is trying to prepare us for those things. And so in comes again for us today that theme of faithfully watching. And so he has one more kind of abrupt little passage of this owner and this thief, and he just says it simply, that if you could plan for it. Like if you could just live your whole life how you wanted to, and then at the right moment turn things around. Jesus goes, if we all had that kind of knowledge, that's probably what we would do. Just like if we were homeowners who knew that a thief was going to break in at a certain time, we'd be able to stop them. But that's not how it works. And so the question comes again, are you prepared? Are you in a position to let the master in? Are you eagerly and faithfully watching for him to come and to return? And so in comes that, and then the theme again of the thief. And Jesus says, since we don't have that luxury of knowing that the Son of Man, that he's actually going to come at an hour when we least expect him. And so as I was studying that and thinking about that, I don't know what your history with the church is, but I would imagine for some of us, maybe that strikes fear. And again, we kind of talked about this at the beginning, but the point of this passage, to be waiting for the master to come, isn't fear-based. It's not so that you can do the work to have your appearances, your things in order. It's to be waiting for the master. And there's a difference from being fear-based and instead being eager to see the master. And so that question comes from us, does it strike fear in you that the Son of Man, this fully divine, fully human one, is going to return one day at an hour when we least expect him? And so Jesus' encouragement to his disciples as he teaches them this is not to live in fear, but instead to live lives that are faithfully watching, eagerly anticipating the return of their master. And so again, this is in the larger context of Luke. And so just as we close, I find it interesting, just a couple of chapters ago when Jesus is going through and he comes to the home of Martha and Mary. And Martha, you remember, is running around and she's doing all of this work. And she's frustrated with her sister, isn't she? And why is she frustrated? She's frustrated and she comes to Jesus because she's doing all the work. And Mary instead has chosen to not do any of the work with Martha, but to sit at the feet of Jesus. And Jesus, instead of saying, "You're right, Martha, Mary, why don't you go help your sister get things ready?" He goes, "No, Martha, there's a bigger picture at play." And he says, Mary instead has done and chosen what's best, to come and to sit at the master's feet. And so that reminder in there to us is that we can lose ourselves in our preparation. Did you know that? That in all of these things that we get caught up with, and some of them very good on the surface, that we can lose sight of the bigger picture. And oftentimes Jesus, the people that he picks a bone with the most are the religious, going, you had all of these signs. Just after this passage, Jesus goes, you're hypocrites. You can interpret the weather, but you can't interpret the time when the Son of Man will come. You've missed the big picture. And so in comes that idea again. Are you ready for the master to come? Are you eagerly looking for him, waiting and watching? And for us to know and to be encouraged that when he comes, his goal, why he came in the first place, was to serve you, to give his life for you, so that you could know what it means to have a relationship with a loving Father who cares for you. It's why he came. And so Jesus says, recognize that with your whole life. Don't live in fear, but recognize that the master will come again one day, and to eagerly and faithfully be anticipating that and watching for that. And so that's the hope for you this week, wherever you find yourself. If you're stuck and locked down at home, that you would remember that there's a bigger picture at play, that there's a faithful and loving God who cares for you, who knows you, and he asks you to be ready. And so think about what that looks like for you this week. Hopefully you'll have some opportunity to spend time in prayer, to maybe call some friends up and encourage them over the phone or texting, or however you want to do that. And then we'll join each other again. We'll come together and keep going through the Gospel of Luke at an hour that you least expect it, but probably Thursday. So that's the plan for now. That's all I have for you. This is a little odd to be speaking into a camera, but I'm thankful to have this platform to do it. So thanks for your grace in all of this. Again, I'd love to invite you to read the Gospel of Luke with us. We'll finish out chapter 12 on our own, and we'll begin later this week starting in chapter 13. So until then, have a great week. We'll see you soon.